We have just concluded an interview. We will now have another interview from one of the pioneers of the Cherokee Strip, also by Mrs. Clarence Roberts.
All right, thank you. Our friend that we are to interview among the pioneers today is Mr.
Charles O. Bowen.
Mr. Charles O. Bowen. We're going to find, I think, perhaps that he is a very intimate friend and knows quite a bit and can give us a lot of sidelights, not only on his own life, but on that of Mr. Ross Risley. I'm going to ask him to cover both.
Well, you want the story of Ross and my acquaintance with Ross and his family?
That'd be fine.
Well, I knew Ross and Ruby in Beaver City. I was superintendent of the county farm there 2 years, and I worked with Mrs. Risley in a store there, a grocery store and dry goods, and later I think I got this county farm job later than that, but I worked in another grocery store there, Jake Miles, and then I went to the county farm and was there 2 years, and I had been acquainted with the assessor there, Frank Shockley, Jim Couch, and one or two others. And Ross, I got acquainted with him, I don't remember how, but I heard him plead I think he was assistant to the county prosecutor on a murder case there, and I heard him, I think that was his first case, at least that's my recollection of the time. And we was there 2 years, and we saw each other most every day. And I lived on the county farm, and of course I forget now where they lived. I think they lived there somewhere in Beaver. But after I left there, why then I had no more connections, with them. And till several years later, I wound up in Guymon, Oklahoma, in the next county west. And Ross and his wife had moved there, and he had a lawyer's office there. And we lived about two or three blocks away from each other. And I had traded for some land out of town there, about 6 miles, and I was trying to farm, and my wife got into a ready-to-wear store, and she run that for, I think we was there 10 years, and then we separated, and I went to California, to Los Angeles, and I don't know when she came out there later, but we didn't go back together again. And I understand through my nieces that we had one boy who was born here in Enid, Oklahoma, and in 1912, December 1912. And we left here in 15, I think. We moved into town from the farm here in 1911, and then we left here about 1915. That's when we went out to Elkhart, Kansas. I had a farm out there, school quarter, southwest of Elkhart, about 16 miles, and we went out there, thought maybe we could get started on it. And I got in with the Standard Oil Company there, and in about a year's time, and I went from there they gave me a station at Mineola, Kansas, which is about 20 miles south of Dodge City. We were there, I built a home and a service station there, and then I traded that off for this land out by Guymon, and moved out there, and then I sold the farm we had out southwest of Elkhart and bought the farm joining me. Had 3 farms there in a row, 6 miles southwest of Guymon. And then next 1 year, I only farmed it 1 year, and then I moved to town and got in with the Moreland Oil Company there, and I worked for them about 2 or 3 years, I forget now. And then we bought a home there, a small home, and we was there, as I say, about 10 years, and then we separated, and I went to California, and finally wound up in Nevada, Hawthorne, Nevada, and she stayed there for some time, but I don't remember how long. But she finally came out to California and established the same kind of a store, ready to wear, out west of Burbank. And I never was up there. I would buy that store one time, I think, but I didn't know where it was at. So I moved up to Hawthorne, Nevada, where they was opening up a big Navy base there. And I'm still there in Hawthorne. I've been there 28 years. I went there in 42. And then I been wanting to come to this celebration here on 16th. They used to, when I was raised here, from 10 years on up, that
Were you on the run?
No, I was, my folks homesteaded.
Your folks were.
But I was here 3 weeks later.
3 weeks later.
There was tents around.
You just missed it.
Yeah, well, I guess we could have went, but Dad, my oldest brother, went with him, and my other brother, 2 years older than I was 10 when I was strip open, and my brother was 12, and another one was 14. Well, then we...
Hold just a minute. I don't believe this is recording. Let's go. We're ready. I'm sorry for that interruption. Lacey?
Forgot
There
to...
it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
I forgot where I was at.
1, 2, we're recording.
We were just, I was asking you about the run, and you said that you had, that you were here 3 weeks later.
Yeah, they came down from Father wrote Mother a letter. Her sister lived in Wichita, and her husband was a deputy sheriff there under Ruth Cone. And we lived there 6 months, from April till September. And then my oldest brother and my father made the run from Honeywell, that is just east of Caldwell. And Dad staked this claim out northwest of Carrier, about 5 miles. And then he wrote my mother first to come on down. So I don't know if we had any furniture or not, but we came down on the train. And got off here at North Enid, and he met us here that same day. He knew when he was coming. And there wasn't anything on a depot there, no buildings. I think there might have been 2, 3 little shacks or something, Of course, I was a big wild-eyed kid, going to a new country at 10 years old, But we went out to the farm, and just shortly after that, Dad came into town for some lumber, some material of some kind, and I came in with him. Of course, I was always with him because I was the youngest, and we, from that on, we were back and forth, and that's about the story. I could talk all day about it, but
That's most interesting. Do you remember any of the early schools in and around Enid?
Schools?
Yes.
No, not here. We moved in to about a year and a half or 2 years. We didn't have any schools out there then at all, and it wasn't compulsory to go. And Dad moved Mother and 3 boys in to North Enid and rented a house, and we went to school 2 winters there. And we'd go out to the farm in the summer and work, and then in the fall when school started, with the second time we came in, and I think there was a Mrs. McLaughlin or Miss McLaughlin, who was one of the teachers, and Leland, Professor Neeland, and that's the only 2 teachers that I remember. I'm not positive.
Well, that's been many years ago.
Yeah, it's pretty far back. And we only went here 2 years, 2 winters. And then they built a big one-room sod schoolhouse about a mile north and a
Sod?
mile east. Yeah, an old sod schoolhouse.
Was it built by the patrons,
Built by the community.
the
you know.
people themselves?
Yeah. And we went to school there. I don't know, my oldest brother, he might not have went to that sod schoolhouse, but my middle brother and I, we went there 3 or 4 winters, you know.
Do you remember how those sod houses were constructed?
Oh, yeah, we
Tell
helped
us
build
how
them.
tell us how they did that.
Well,
I have no conception of it.
they just plow the sods about as wide as half this table, and they go along with the spade and cut it, you know, and cut out the good pieces that break
Big
in two.
squares.
And you just lay it on the ground. They shave this grass all off and make a solid mixture. Well, in fact, they'd go down to the subsoil, and you'd just be surprised how solid those floors were, you know. And they'd smooth them off nice, you know. In fact, we played for dancers years later, and they danced on those dirt floors, you know. You'd just be surprised. And there wasn't very many of them of any size. There was 2, 3 pretty good sized ones, where 2, 3 bedrooms, you know. Building
My
them on to
goodness.
put poles up, or I don't know how they did roof them, but I've helped carry sod. We had a team on a sled. You go along with it, chop out chunks any length, you know, and they'd shave the walls just all the time as they go, and then plaster them with this caliche, they called it, you know. It made good plastering.
Yes, it
Some of
does.
them would make a floor out of it too.
And that was gotten right there locally too, wasn't it?
Yeah, right.
All of your materials were right in the community.
Oh, yes, all that stuff. Of course, they had to make windows and everything, but they'd
Yeah.
make those about 2 feet thick. And when you put a window in, you know, it was a nice place in the wintertime for flowers, you know.
Yes.
And there was, most of them were about from 2 to 3 feet deep in the cellar, you know, like.
Uh-huh.
And then they'd have a storm door come down like an old-fashioned cellar door, you know. And they also had another door down even at the wall.
Did you ever have any tornadoes at that time? You did?
One of the biggest in the country.
What year was that? Do you remember?
Well, I can't tell you exactly, but let's see. Oh, it was about I think it was still in the late 90s, because I was married in 1904, first time, and I was married in 1906. Well, this was before I was married in 1904, no, 3 or 4 years. So it's been about 98 or 99.
My goodness.
And the big one started out about 8 miles west of us on the north side of the road. And we didn't have any cellar, and we went one across the road about a half mile from us, and I had a sick brother with smallpox. We got him out of bed and carried him up practically over there. They had a cellar, and it looked like it was coming right at us. Well, when it varied north of us 2 miles, and it was just about sundown. Oh, it just raised the dickens with everything, you know. Pulled out trees 3 feet thick, you know, upended them, pulled them out, and sucked all the fish and the water out of the creek that followed. Plastered everything it come to.
My goodness.
And it was just amusing how some of those little old shacks stood. We'd tear up big buildings, you know, and chickens looked like they'd been picked by hand. Straws sticking out of the boards in the barn, you know, the wind was such a force. And that traveled about, I would say 12, 13, maybe 14 miles. And then it just disappeared. And after dark, we hitched up horse and buggy and went over the closest place, and we couldn't find out anything, you know. Everybody was so excited. Nobody knew anything, you see. But the wind got up to about 60 miles an hour going toward it at our place 2 miles away. It was one of the big ones.
Must have
But
been.
that's the only one we ever had in that community. Never had another one that I ever heard of. And
It's remarkable how those houses stood, isn't it?
I just, well, you just can't describe them.
I know.
They do.
Getting back to Mr. Risley, do you remember something about that first case that he was on, the murder case that you mentioned? Do you remember anything particular about that?
Well, I think that they, I don't remember it clearly, but I don't think they, see, he was up for murder, you see.
You don't remember who the
No, I wouldn't remember the
defendant
name.
was?
It was in there north and west of Beaver City, I think. Or somewhere in there. Forgan is about 8-10 miles north. And railroad, the branch of the railroad come from Forgan down to Beaver.
Mm-hmm.
I was there when the first train came in.
Mm-hmm.
They had a boxcar depot on the north side of the river, and they was building the bridge when I went there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to carpenter work there and worked there a while, and then I got these other little odd jobs. Moved my family out there. They were still in Enid here.
Mm-hmm.
Shipped the furniture out and got on this county farm for 2 years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the Risleys almost every day, you know.
Yeah.
I was in town every day.
Was Mr. Risley the prosecuting attorney or assistant prosecuting?
Pardon me.
Yes.
Yeah, he was assistant. That's the way I think of it.
And that was probably his first
I think it was his first case.
that he had. Well, that has certainly been interesting.
I'm sorry.
These things that you people give us like this will be wonderful for the children and the grandchildren who will study their history of Oklahoma by such interesting things as this,
Mm-hmm.
by the human voice, and by listening to the first-hand stories of these, which is much better than reading it by a historian.
So, you know, it's pretty hard to just go back. You just got to relive it more or less,
That's
you know,
right.
to remember it, you know. And
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Bowen.